Hello, welcome back if you've been following our series. Otherwise, welcome to our data development and analysis edition of How to Achieve Better Results in Direct Marketing. I'm Noemi Hedrick, marketing specialist. This is Bob, our president, and we're going to be covering a lot today. So sit back, relax. We'll give you access to download the e-guide on how to achieve better results at the end of the presentation, so you can take advantage of the full series all in one place. So we're going to talk about data development and analysis right now. Right, Bob?
That's right. So data analysis is a big part of the conversations that we have with our clients related to their direct marketing campaigns. And within that, we talk about the essentials of data, the accuracy of data. We really work with our clients to make sure that their data can reflect a better understanding of their audience beyond just, having, the correct emails and the correct addresses. And then we work with them on data that needs to be collected to support and optimize your campaigns as you go forward. So those are some of the elements that we're going to cover today.
That's right. Data is everything.
Data is everything. Absolutely. So the keys to effective data are absolutely essential: validation and appending to ensure accuracy. Accurate data, I can't emphasize enough, is probably one of the most critical aspects of a successful direct marketing campaign. Making sure that, you have, solid data that reflects your audience, and that you're keeping that data current. You have methods for appending that data and adding elements to the data are all critical aspects of not just starting a direct marketing campaign, but optimizing it as you do it over and over again to grow your business, to grow your organization, whatever you're using direct marketing for.
That's right. And we're not just, as Bob mentioned, we're not just talking about email address, physical address, first name and last name. We're talking about really understanding your customer base, their likes, their dislikes, the preferred medium of communication, how they are using your products, if they have used it in the past. All of this data is going to give you insights that will allow you to then prepare and create a robust campaign.
That's right. So one of the big decisions that you need to make at the beginning is to build a list or to buy a list, right? Where is your data going to come from? Our preference is always to encourage our clients to build a list, right? Building a list gives you the ability to really understand your audience, not only make sure that the information is accurate, but they're going to be receptive to whatever you're selling or you're trying to accomplish. And that is super essential, in the nonprofit space, in the development space. Buying a list, to solicit funds is probably not a great, direction to take. So, but building a list is, again, always, preferable. It allows you to add different information about past history, a little bit of information about what you know about the audience. So building a list is always going to be, again, preferential. But in some situations, you have to buy the data, right? You really have no choice but to go out and acquire data. Once it's acquired, though, then we are encouraging our clients to kind of hold on to that and build from that based on the information that they're collecting about those clients. So.
That's right. And the example that you gave, Bob, is a great one. If you are in the nonprofit organization and you're trying to put together a campaign to ask for funds, they don't know you. They don't know who you are, what your cause is, what you stand for. You may want to begin building that relationship first before you ask for support. So you could still buy the list, but the communication that you're going to have with them will be a little different at first.
So again, if you're in the situation where you have to buy data, make sure that you're, finding effective sources for that data. Bot lists are sometimes a little bit questionable. The information a lot of times is not as current as it should be. But if that's where you have to start, that's where you have to start. A lot of times, if you're, selling a specific product to a specific audience, you can use different sources like publications or associations. you kind of tap into their database, because now you already know that database reflects relevance with the information that you're trying to share.
That's right.
So again, there's a lot of different places where you can collect data from. If you're selling to consumers or trying to saturate an area, EDDM is a great source, to get your information out. That every door direct mail really allows you to kind of get to the people that you want. But again, whether you're building or buying, that the database is essential. And again, if you're going to buy data, really find an effective source of data. There's a lot of options available to you.
That's right.
So again, a big part of what we do with our clients is work with them on data segmentation that allows us to personalize the campaign. So by data segmentation, again, we're looking for elements about the audience beyond just an address or an email. What have they bought from us in the past? Have they donated in the past? Are they a lapsed donor? All the pieces of information allows you to personalize the communications that you have, and that personalization equals relevance, and relevance a lot of times is what the drivers are for response.
That's right.
So I'm going to give you a couple real simple examples of how you can use data to segment your messaging. This is, again, a super simple example of how a direct marketing piece can be created using the information that we have about the size of the shoe, right? If we know the size or we know the gender, whether they're male or female, then we can change out the graphics, change out the content in order to deliver a much more relevant message to the audience.
Hey, I'm a size 9, right? So if I received this offer in the mail, I would very likely respond because I love shoes too.
Yeah. So again, here's another great example. Again, if you're fundraising, you're trying to tap into alumni, you have a lot of information about that previous student. You know what college, what degree they have, when they graduated. The more you can bring that into all the elements of your direct marketing campaign, the more that person's going to feel like it's resonating with them. And that resonation is what we're striving for with the direct marketing campaigns we create for our customers.
You want it to be as relatable as possible.
Absolutely. And then this third example, again, if you know that you have, an existing customer or the potential customer, you can change out the offers. Your call to action for an existing customer might be a 10% discount, and for a prospect customer might be 20%, encouraging them to really participate in what you're offering them to do.
Yeah, and it's also beyond the offer, right? It's the messaging, the way you speak to your existing customers identifies that relationship that you have with them versus the prospect customers that you don't yet have the relationship, but you want to kind of indicate that a little bit so that way they understand that you know your audience.
Right. So again, data segmentation is a critical part of what we work with our clients on, and even simple segmentation is going to make your campaign much more effective.
Yeah, at a minimum, you should be segmenting into 3 categories: your existing customers who are active with you, your non-active customers, so you can speak to them differently and try to get them back or understand why they're not active with you anymore, and your prospects, right? The ones that you're trying to get to the business with you.
Clients, So again, the other element of being an effective database is performance data, right?
Yeah.
What we're working with our clients on is in the planning stages, in the strategy stages, is really not only define what the end result that they're trying to achieve, but what can we measure along the way that will help us better understand, is one aspect of the campaign outperforming another? Is the content a little bit different, and the content, the way we're delivering content, outperforms something else? So if we factor in these performance data elements, we can pivot while the campaign is running, or at the end have more data sets so that we can work with our clients to optimize their direct marketing campaign the next time they do it.
It's very important for you to keep that performance data in mind at this stage of the entire process, because you want to make sure that you're going to have the data points you need to collect the metrics you need to measure it and put a report together.
Yeah, great points. So,
and now we want to introduce you to Bill. Meet Bill. Bill is just like you and I. Bill has a lot of great intentions, but doesn't necessarily have the insights that he needs to put together a successful campaign. He struggles a little bit with his current campaigns. He wears way too many hats. He's kind of a jack of all trades, but master of none. His performance is low, and he really wants to succeed. So we are going to talk a little bit about our approach and how we can help Bill go down the path to success.
So like we've done with our other webinars, we've kind of talked about a good, better, best approach. So for Bill at a good level, and this is where most of us are, is we're building and maintaining a single database, right? So having a single database that houses all your data is absolutely critical. From that point, you can start to add or change or modify, but it needs to be in one place. If you're constantly pulling data from different sources, you know, it's not preferable, but maybe that's how you have to do it. But when you get to a certain point, having a single database for marketing communications is absolutely essential. And once you have that, you need to establish governance, right, to manage that data. So you put in a lot of work, you've cleaned it up, you know, you've kind of really nurtured it along. You want to make sure that any new data that's coming into it is kind of following, you know, some type of protocols so that the data does not become obsolete, you know, right after it's been worked on.
There has to be a gatekeeper to be able to kind of have an overview of where the data is being used and where it's coming from to be able to manage and maintain it. So that is key to be able to have clean, accurate data consistently.
And then, you know, you're probably using tools or have other resources to keep your information or your data up to date. Could be coming out of an order entry system on your end, or it could be from some marketing efforts that you've kind of used in the past. So we know for a lot of our clients, when we run lists for them, they get, you know, mover updates, they get data updates. There's a lot of really good information that can become when we manage data for some of our clients' campaigns, because they're getting information back that's just helping them make sure that that information is current. Plus, plus, there's a lot of other resource tools available to you.
A good example is if you are working with a mailing house and they're managing your list, you give them your list. If they're doing it right, they're going to process it through the National Change of Address and COA database, and they're going to be able to give that list back to you updated, as well as some undeliverable records. They're no good, and you should take those lists. You should be asking for those lists to then maintain and update your database. So that way it provides a more efficient campaign, but also it's budget friendly.
Right. So for Bill to kind of move up the ladder a little bit and get better, you know, he needs to append that data with insights about his audience, right? So again, we're talking about, you know, just going beyond, you know, addresses and emails, but having just a little bit more insights into that audience that can be, you know, we can commit to, that will allow us to really understand a little bit more about them. You know, so that we can then start to introduce simple segmentation to increase that relevance. So again, it doesn't have to be, you know, extensive, but any little additional insights that you can add to your database that demonstrates that you understand that person a little bit better is really going to drive the results for your direct marketing campaign.
That's right.
And then you need to close the loop to that, ensure that data integrity is maintained. So as new data comes in, you've got to close the loop and, you know, make sure that it's getting, you know, right back into your database system. So if your campaign is successful and you generated some new customers, or you've sold some products, or, you know, you've developed some new donors or level of donor, you know, all that information, if you can close that loop and make sure that that information gets into your database, you're just going to have a much stronger database, much better database, you know, for the next campaign that you do.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's so much information in data. You can find out the interest points of your customer base by appending data, as Bob mentioned, and you may find out that they have a huge interest in traveling. And that may shape up the offers that you provide, which then again is going to make that much more relatable, and they're going to respond because there's an interest there that you already know about. So all of this plays a huge role into a successful campaign.
Yep, great example.
Yeah.
So, okay, so for Bill to get really good, to be at his best, he needs to continue to grow his data to support personalization, right? So again, if he can create, 2 or 3 different data sets with information that's relevant, to that audience, and then can start to use that data to personalize, their communications, whether, again, it's email, it's digital ads, it's printing, all those tool sets have the ability to accept and personalize your message. Right. And then integrate third-party tools, right, to ensure that your data is current. There's a ton of third-party tools out there. Dun & Bradstreet has them. ZoomInfo has them. Blackbaud, I think, even from a nonprofit standpoint, has appending tools or other tools that can be integrated into your database that ensures that your data is always current. So as things change, it just automatically updates your database. And then really work to augment your data to support real points of relevance, right? So again, just, knowing that they're a male or female, good. But if really you can understand a little bit more about that person, what their interests are, again, how they've maybe participated or interacted with you in the past, if you really feel that you can support other points of data that really make a difference for that audience, it's really going to drive a different response to your direct marketing campaign.
Yeah, here's a good example. If you identify your top 100 customers and you have some starting data points, you can actually provide that to a third-party data source company, and they can find clone customers or like customers that have the same data points that you can then use to prospect to, because they're very much likely to respond because they're modeled after your best customers. So just some things to keep in mind on how to grow your database and find customers that will likely respond to your offers and your communication.
Right. So then again, this last point, we touched on it. I mean, again, a good database is going to have several data points, that are going to gauge the performance of the data. So again, what we're looking to help our customers is understand, is email outperforming digital ads? Is printing outperforming, email? Is a call to action, one type of call to action better than another? If we can work to get that all defined up front, and we're collecting those data points as the campaign is progressing, again, it really brings a lot more insights to the performance of the campaign, at the end, and allows us to really work with our clients to optimize the next campaign they're doing. So
that's a great point. That's going to get Bill to really maximize his efforts. Test is rule number 2, other than look at your data and maintain your data. In any marketing campaign, you want to, every opportunity you have, to build in testing into all of your campaigns.
So again, on this path of moving from good to best, you want to go beyond just basic data, right? I mean, there's a lot of information out there, so use it. Develop messaging relevance based on the data. Again, the more you can kind of make that connection, the better off you're going to be. And to Noemi's point, measure everything, test everything, because data just allows you so much more insights than you wouldn't have without it. So
absolutely. So some of the bonus tips that we have to provide is you should go in understanding that 40% of your success relies on the data that you have. So the better the data, the more likely you're going to succeed because of it. And again, we're talking about just all points of data, not just name and address. You want to personalize your campaigns with as much information as you can that will allow your audience to relate to you and your business. And measure everything. We've been talking about this. You want to make sure that you have an understanding of how your campaign is doing throughout the campaign and make changes on the go if you can, just to optimize it and maximize the response. So
great.
That's it. That's our data talk for today. You have access to the Better Results e-guide, where you have information about data development and analysis, as well as the entire series of how to achieve better direct marketing results. And you can download it at betterresultsforyou.com.
So we want to thank you for spending some time with us today. We're really excited about sharing this information with you. Again, the series is going to continue, so watch for our next webinar on creative messaging and design.
That's right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.